How well do you really know your friends? What if those closest to you, the ones you trust with your life, were hiding dark, twisted secrets? In today's story, we unravel the shocking betrayal of a young girl whose closest friends plotted her demise. This is the heartbreaking case of Skylar Neese, a tale of friendship turned fatal. What would drive two best friends to commit such an unthinkable act? Let's find out. It's July 2012 in Star City, West Virginia, a small town where everyone knows everyone. 16-year-old Skylar Neese was a bright, happy, and ambitious high school student. She was loved by her family, had dreams of becoming a criminal lawyer, and shared a close bond with her two best friends, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. No one could have foreseen that these friendships, once full of laughter and shared secrets, would take a deadly turn. The story we're about to tell you is not just about a tragic murder. It's about the dangers of misplaced trust, how toxic relationships can spiral out of control, and how a tight-knit community was left stunned by a betrayal that no one saw coming. Skylar's disappearance and subsequent death would come to symbolize a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes, even those we think we know best can have the darkest of secrets. In this video, we'll walk you through the chilling events leading to Skylar's untimely death, the months-long search for answers, and the ultimate revelation that would haunt her family, friends, and the entire town. This is a story of betrayal, cruelty, and heartbreak, but also one of strength and the pursuit of justice. It all began on a warm summer night. Skylar's parents, Dave and Mary Neese, thought their daughter was safely in bed, like any other night. But Skylar, seeking one last summer adventure, snuck out of her bedroom window around midnight to meet her friends. She didn't know it would be the last time she ever left her home alive. The next morning, when Skylar failed to show up for work and couldn't be found, her parents' world was turned upside down. Little did they know that the people they had trusted with their daughter's safety were the same ones responsible for her death. It's 11 p.m. on July 5, 2012. Skylar Neese lies in bed texting with her friends Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. They've planned to pick her up shortly for a late-night drive, a common summer activity for teens in Star City. Despite her parents' warnings to stay home, Skylar sneaks out of her room, closing the window quietly behind her. In the dark, Shelia and Rachel pull up to Skylar's apartment complex. She gets into the car without hesitation, just as she had done many times before. The three girls had been inseparable since middle school, sharing everything, from inside jokes to teenage troubles. Tonight, however, would be different. Skylar had no idea what her so-called friends had in store. By 7 a.m. the next morning, Dave and Mary Neese noticed something was wrong. Skylar hadn't come home. At first, they thought she might have stayed out late, but when they called her work, they were told she never showed up. Panic set in. Where was their daughter? They immediately reported Skylar missing. The police initially treated her disappearance as a runaway case. After all, she was a teenager who had snuck out before, and there were no signs of foul play. But Dave and Mary knew better. Skylar wasn't the type to disappear without a trace. Over the next few days, the Neese family began posting missing person flyers all around town, pleading with anyone who might know something. Local news outlets covered the story, and soon the entire community was involved in the search for Skylar. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade, and the unthinkable started to seem more likely. The search for Skylar Neese quickly turned into a media sensation. Missing posters featuring her bright smile were plastered all over Star City, and news broadcasts asked anyone with information to come forward. As her parents appeared on local television, tearfully pleading for their daughter's safe return, friends and neighbors couldn't understand how a girl like Skylar could simply vanish. Meanwhile, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf were seemingly heartbroken. They shared the missing posters on social media and cried alongside Skylar's parents, offering false comfort. To everyone else, the girls were simply two devastated friends hoping for Skylar's return. The police had little to go on at first. There was no evidence of a struggle, no signs of abduction, and no leads. They began reviewing security footage from the area, which eventually led them to a crucial piece of evidence: grainy CCTV footage from a nearby gas station that showed Skylar getting into Shelia's car that night. Initially, Shelia and Rachel stuck to their story. They had picked Skylar up, driven around for a while, and then dropped her off near her apartment. But something didn't add up. Skylar hadn't come home that night, and her friend's behavior during the search started to seem more suspicious. They avoided certain questions and seemed overly eager to place blame elsewhere. Despite their apparent grief, police noticed inconsistencies in Shelia and Rachel's stories. Investigators began to suspect that these two girls knew more about Skylar's disappearance than they were letting on. As pressure mounted, the truth was about to come crashing down, leading to a revelation that would change everything. As days turned into weeks, the police began to suspect that Skylar's disappearance was no accident. Something wasn't right, and all eyes were on Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. The girls, who had initially been cooperative, began acting more erratically. Friends noticed they seemed oddly detached, and rumors started swirling around the school. In early interviews with the police, Shelia and Rachel claimed they had dropped Skylar off near her apartment that night. They said they drove around for a bit afterward and then went home. However, the police were not convinced. The story had gaps, and there were contradictions between the two friends' accounts. Investigators began digging deeper into the girls' social media posts and phone records, looking for any clues that might shed light on what really happened that night. The more they investigated, the more they realized that the girls were hiding something. Friends of Skylar reported that in the months leading up to her disappearance, the dynamic between the trio had shifted. Skylar had been increasingly left out, and there was noticeable tension between her and the other two girls. One of the key pieces of evidence that heightened suspicion was the gas station footage. It clearly showed Skylar getting into Shelia's car, contradicting their original story that they had only seen her briefly that night. Investigators pressed Shelia and Rachel for more information, but the girls remained tight-lipped, sticking to their fabricated story. However, under the surface, cracks in their friendship were beginning to show. Rachel, who had always been the more emotional of the two, started to feel the weight of the guilt. Shelia, on the other hand, seemed more composed, even cold at times. But as the investigation intensified and police began to piece together the puzzle, Rachel's mental state began to deteriorate. The pressure was building, and it was only a matter of time before one of them would break. On January 3, 2013, nearly 6 months after Skylar's disappearance, Rachel Shoaf had a complete mental breakdown. Overwhelmed by guilt and unable to keep the secret any longer, she confessed everything to the police. In a tearful confession, Rachel revealed the chilling details of Skylar's murder. She and Shelia had planned Skylar's murder for months. Their friendship with Skylar had soured, and they wanted her out of their lives. But instead of simply cutting her off, they made the unthinkable decision to kill her. On the night of July 5th, they lured Skylar out of her house under the guise of a friendly hangout. They had brought kitchen knives, intending to kill her. Rachel described how they drove to a remote wooded area in Pennsylvania, not far from the West Virginia border. Once there, they asked Skylar to step out of the car, pretending they needed to walk around for a bit. It was then that they attacked her. Skylar fought back, but the girls overpowered her, stabbing her multiple times until she collapsed. Rachel's confession was both shocking and heartbreaking. She expressed deep remorse for what she had done, but her words couldn't undo the horror of that night. Skylar had been betrayed by the very people she trusted most. After Rachel's confession, the police were finally able to locate Skylar's body, buried under a shallow pile of dirt and leaves in the woods where she had been killed. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Skylar's parents were devastated, learning that the very girls who had pretended to care about their daughter were responsible for her death. The confession also painted a disturbing picture of the kind of cruelty that can exist even in seemingly ordinary friendships. The murder plot, as revealed through Rachel Shoaf's confession, was a deeply disturbing and premeditated act of betrayal. For months, Shelia Eddy and Rachel had grown resentful of Skylar, seeing her not as a friend, but as a burden they no longer wanted to deal with. Rather than confront their feelings or distance themselves from Skylar in a nonviolent way, they decided to orchestrate her murder. And so, the tragic story of Skylar Neese serves as a chilling reminder that betrayal can come from the people we least expect. Her legacy lives on through the hearts of those who loved her, and her case continues to shed light on the darker side of human relationships. If you found this story both heart-wrenching and thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime cases that highlight the fragility of trust and the pursuit of justice. Thank you for watching.